Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to the session on youth-led innovation, youth-led research and innovation that provides solutions to water-related climate change issues. The event is jointly organized by the Office of the President's Special Envoy for Climate Change in Indonesia and the UNESCO IHP. As we said earlier, I am your moderator. I am the youth focal point for UNESCO IHP. So the objective of this session is really to highlight the research and innovative initiatives of the youth groups that are present at COP24. And this event is very dear to UNESCO's heart as well as the special envoys, because we see young people as more than beneficiaries of our programs. We see them as agents of change, as experts, as knowledge holders, as innovators who can add value to the climate negotiations and also provide solutions to the achievement of the 2030 agenda, which is our shared developmental agenda. So, our panelists today are outstanding youth leaders, and we have with us Mr. Miguel Tripo from the Water Youth Network, Carrie Karsgaard, who is the project coordinator for the Tracking Change Youth Project at the University of Alberta, Alexandra Lux, behind me, and she's the president of the Climate Network. Also with us is Miss Leah Zakia, who is the Deputy Assistant to the President's Special Envoy for Climate Change in Indonesia. To her left is Miss Nohad Awad, who is the Lebanon Country Coordinator for the Arab Youth Climate Movement. And last but not least is Mr. Jiga Stukut, I'm so sorry, who is the chairperson for awareness at the Youth the Water community in Central and Eastern Europe. And he's also the incoming president for the organization. So the format of today's discussion, the speakers will present their initiatives, after which we will open the floor for questions. I hand over to Miguel.
Thanks, Nicole. Thanks the Indonesian authorities for inviting us and making this space for us. It's a pleasure for your network to be here in this pavilion, which is really nice. So I will be presenting a little bit about Water Youth Network and a little bit about my research in Brazil. So I will be really quick in order to give time to my colleagues here as well. So Water Youth Network is an organization that has is connected with many young professionals around the world. So we have here some pictures of that. So actually we have another member here as well who is there. So we have the opportunity to attend this event. So it is really nice for us to be able to participate in this kind of events, since it is really important for our professional development. So as I say, we are an organization that works as connector of different people working around the world with water issues mainly, and we try to create initiatives in order to be innovative as well, and to try to be inclusive, and to try to connect different stakeholders from different parts of the world. So this is more or less like how is composed the organization. So most of the people so far is from Europe. So nearly 50% of the members are from Europe, and we are still like expanding around the world. So like we have like some people from Asia as well, some from the Americas, and some from Africa. So, but I mean like we are still like growing a lot, and we have like different like wire professionals like working in different areas like inside the wire sector. So you can actually see some of them. So we are organized like this. I don't go so much in detail. So this is like the thematic working groups that we are working in. So the one I'm coordinating is the disaster risk reduction. Then there is another one that is integrated wire resource management, and then wire and policy, and wire and sanitation and hygiene. So as we say, our mission is to connect young professionals and students with different sectors, and also empower young leaders to share and develop skills and expertise to create and advance wire sector solutions. So far, I mean, like we totally agree that it has been a little bit slow process to include like young professionals, but we have noticed some advance in this. So that's why we are actually here, and it's really we are really happy to be sharing this space with like more professionals and young professionals as well. So I mean, like these are some of the steps that we are actually like seeing so far. And we are like looking forward to actually meet more people working in the wire sector, but not only the wire sector, in different sectors, but working around the world. So we are also very, very connected with the UN Major Group for Children and Youth. So in order to actually the experience that we are actually getting so far as youth and children will be also implemented in the UN as well. So this is so we are supporting this group at the United Nations as well. So mostly with the objective, the development goal 6, that is clean water and sanitation. But we are also working with different issues related with water. So we have had the opportunity to participate in different events, like some of them are just here. I won't mention like all of them because I made this some, but like the last one is this one is the COP24. So we're so glad to be here and to be able to participate in these kind of panels. So we try to take like the young professionals to these high level events in order to actually they have an incidence in the decision process. So as organization, so we still want to expand the network and engage with local young organizations as well, and also to mainstream youth input at local scale as well, institutional development, and straight intergenerational cooperation, which we actually consider is really important, since like we as a youth project don't have like so much experience and knowledge, but we are on the way for doing that. So it's really nice to get involved with other people who are really experienced on different areas in order to actually in the future be like future leaders. So some of our partners are these ones. So we have more, but like some of the main ones are these ones. So they are like the ones who are supporting us in order to attend these kind of events. So yeah, we're really grateful with them. So, and I will explain a little bit about my research. So this is research I am doing in Brazil. So I'm from Mexico, but I'm living in Brazil so far. So I'm doing my PhD right now. So I'm just started this year. So it's really in the very like early stage. So if you have any questions, you can like approach me if we don't really have like time for making questions. So the objective is to investigate how is social innovation supported by public policies can play a role towards adaptation to flooding impacts in São Luís do Paraitinga, Brazil, that is a community in the state of São Paulo. Yeah? Why floods? So I just put these graphics because I feel like they are really like they really show like the impact that they have in the different communities. So like we have like floods as one of the natural disasters that I actually could them like call them natural disasters because they are disasters but they become disasters when we are actually there. You know? I mean they always happen, but when people just like go to live there, like we call them, I think we badly call them natural disasters. So I think we still have to change this paradigm and try to call them like more like human disasters, basically. So, and they affect a lot of people, and many people are killed due to these impacts, these different hazards. So, here you can see like worldwide, basically, the number of weather-related disasters that is related with floods as well. So, and as you can see, like almost everywhere in the world, like is happening like lots of disasters related to weather, related with weather issues. So, and I'm focused in Brazil because I was studying before in Europe, but then I went back home to Mexico, and then I noticed that in Latin America there is still a lot of work to do. So, and Brazil is actually one of the countries which is the most affected by disasters. So it doesn't even appear in this graphic from this report. So it's because it's the only one that is really affected, but it's not like there are not many other countries like an absolute number that are affected by disasters, weather-related disasters. So these ones are some pictures about the study area where I'm going to work in the next 3 years. So it's a community that is a cultural heritage, national cultural heritage. So, and it was flooded in 2010. So, like the flood really impacted the place. So, I will show you some pictures about that. So, it is like some pictures about the place. So, there were like some floodings and also like some landslides that really impact the city. You know? But it's really important to look at this because like they are kind of really used to floods, but they never have like such a flood like the one in 2010. So. So after the floods, the community made like some recovery actions. Like some of them you can actually see them. Like as you saw in the last pictures, the church was totally destroyed, and it was really important for them as cultural heritage because they are really Catholic in this community. So they really felt like what happened in 2010, and I think it's really important to take into account also the local context. And they now implemented like this water march. So the water in 2010 reached those levels where the paint is just up there. It's quite a lot actually. So it's just to have an idea. And they make like they paint some electricity sticks in order to remember which was the level that the river reached in that time in 2010. And in the other picture, there are some, as you can see, it's like a kind of mitigation adaptation measure that they implemented in order to keep safer the place, but actually still look really unsafe, to be honest. But yeah, we are just starting this research, so we are going to, hopefully in the next years, we are going to look for more initiatives as well. So how we can actually work with social innovation. So the idea is to make some workshops, interviews, questionnaires, and others, like the use of social media. So as well as Group Network, it has been like really good experience to me, in the sense that I was able to participate in different like events, organizing different workshops, interviews, and methodologies that would be nice to actually work with people in order to give them or provide them like solutions, but in order to construct solutions together. So we had a first like visit to this place from like it was like 3 weeks ago, and we were like just talking with the people so far. So like to see like what was the point of view like about this flood that happened in 2010. So it was like really impressive to hear their experiences about 2010, because like they lost basically everything, but they are still like living like very like near to the river. So I mean like there should be a reason why they want to stay there. So it's not like, okay, we're going to take you out from here because your house is there actually. So I think it's really important to see and to learn from there as well, in order to try to understand why it's happening that as well, and to try to empower them to make the right solutions. So, Wired Group Network, at least for this research, like has the possibility to participate in this kind of events to present the work. So, also allowed us to learn more about good practices that other young professionals and stakeholders are like working on in different countries, and to actually consult like different like young professionals from the same network. So I think it's really useful to be in contact with people that are actually interested in the same kind of topics. And as a final slide, some recommendations for decision makers. So far, I feel like we have seen that it's really important to not only look at the top-down approaches, but also bottom-up approaches, in order to actually know about how communities are organized to be more adaptive and resilient, also to be more preventive than reactive. So usually in Latin America, we are like super reactive. So we don't like take into account so much like prevention measures, and I think it's really important in order to prevent like disasters. And the other one is like another recommendation is take youth into account. I think like we have like so much enthusiasm, probably we don't have the knowledge that other people have, but we have like the enthusiasm to actually work and learn about different practices. So pass on the knowledge. I think it would be like really nice for us and for you as well, because like I mean like everyone has a cycle, so I think it's nice to don't miss this information. And yeah, and also like a proposal for the Indonesian would be nice if you actually like we get in contact and we try to look for people in Indonesia, in order to try to provide like or contact you with people who are working in the topics that you are actually like facing in Indonesia as well. So yeah, that's basically what it is.
One moment. There we go.
This is a photo of Richard, my friend. He's from Tête Leger, which in Canada we call Fort McPherson, but his Gwich'in community refers to it by its traditional name, Tête Leger. And Richard is a teenager. He's in high school, and he lives with his dad in this community of about 700 people. He lives off the land, this is him, mostly fishing in the rivers nearby and also hunting. He hunts for small animals like rabbits and marten, but also larger game. And these animals and fish provide his livelihood. And he's been learning from his dad how to work the land for the last few years since he's been a teenager and even as a younger boy. And his dad's been teaching him about how the land has changed. In the 70s, his dad said you could dig down just a few inches and then hit permafrost almost immediately. And then if you could chip a big hole in the permafrost, bam, instant freezer. And so you can throw your fish in there and your berries and your animals, and the food will stay frozen for a long time. And now, if you dig down, the ground is soft, and if you dig a hole in the same place, it'll just fill with water in a few hours. Because the permafrost where Richard lives is melting. And the banks of the rivers where he lives are collapsing into the river, filling the water with silt and making it unlivable for a lot of the fish that he and his community live off of. The water levels are also going down, and it's harder and harder to get supplies upriver to his community, and the prices of food are more expensive. And when I asked Richard about what he's learning about the land and climate, he says, with the climate changing, it's becoming harder and harder for his elders to understand the land and to pass on knowledge of the land to him and his fellow teenagers. And he feels like he's losing his way of life, and he's not sure what's going to happen next. And so Richard is one of a number of youth that I've worked with through the Tracking Change Youth Knowledge project at the University of Alberta. And I'm not an Indigenous youth. I'm an educator that works really closely with these communities, listening to them and learning from them and figuring out how their knowledge can better inform our policies and processes. And the purpose of Tracking Change is to document and share Indigenous knowledge for governance and policy processes, including the knowledge of young people and youth, like Richard. The project is really grounded in the idea that Indigenous knowledge is unique and provides a unique understanding of the land and is also legitimate, just as legitimate as we think traditional science is. And so we're listening and learning from these people and learning other ways of listening to them, other ways of incorporating their knowledge into our policy processes so that we can make better decisions about the lands that these people live on. And so this is actually part of a long-term research project with adult communities throughout Canada's north. But I've had the pleasure of working on the youth component of the project because these communities have requested they really want to see their knowledge passed on to their young people. This region of Canada is known for low high school graduation rates, a lot of teen suicides, because life is very difficult in the north, provisions are difficult, and there's not a lot of opportunities for these young people. And so their elders want to see their knowledge grow, as do the youth. And so this is a team of youth that has been at COP with me for the last week and a half. I've actually worked with a much larger group of youth who came to Edmonton in Canada about 6 months ago to share their knowledge, not in a science fair, but at a knowledge fair. So instead of sharing traditional science at a fair, these young people learned from their elders, learned from their communities about the climate change on their land, and brought that knowledge to a fair, exchanged it with each other, and government representatives could come listen to them. And so this delegation of 6 has come and spoken at a number of events around COP. They're gone now, which is why I'm representing them today, but I asked them how best to represent them in their knowledge. And you can see here a quote from one of them, that what's most important to them is learning from their elders, and then taking that knowledge in order to take action in their communities. And so you have a sense of where I'm talking about. This is a map of the Mackenzie River Basin where our project is located. And this is mostly in the Northwest Territories, but in a bit of the Yukon Territories and the provinces of British Columbia, Alberta, and Saskatchewan in Canada. And you can't quite see it, but at the very, very bottom of the map, I don't have a movable mic, so I'm going to run and point to it. is our northernmost large city, Edmonton, Alberta, if you've heard of this. So far north of the most northern city is where these young people are from, and they stretch all the way across to Tuktoyaktuk, which is the northernmost city there on this map. They might map this land slightly differently according to the indigenous communities that make up this place. And so this map shows the exact same location, but with the maps of the different nations. Most of these people are Dene and Gwich'in and are related to each other, but form different communities and nations. And in Canada, these people have a relationship with the state through something called treaties. And these treaties dictate a nation-to-nation relationship that is the grounding of our relations between people and land. And Canada has a history of not always recognizing these treaties and not always taking Indigenous perspectives seriously, making decisions on behalf of Indigenous people, researching Indigenous people instead of allowing those people to do the research themselves, and breaching their treaties in a number of ways. And the young people that I've worked with are aware of this and are hoping to see a change and hoping to have more of a voice in Canadian policy. Wait for it. There we go. So these are some of the knowledge share posters that the youth have created. There's way more. But some of the issues that these young people have talked about, and they all relate to water, including the life around water, the life and health of fish, lowering water levels, increased silt, increased algae in rivers, which makes it difficult for fish to live, changing patterns of fish movement and migration, and the types of fish that they're seeing in their communities are changing. So some are disappearing, new species are coming in. The students also talk a lot about ice. Ice is important to their way of life, more than it is probably for any of us here, especially if you're in Indonesia. But many of these communities rely on ice highways in order to get supplies in and out of their communities, and also for their traditional hunting and trapping routes. And what's happening is that ice is freezing later and melting sooner, and it's more unpredictable. The people don't know how thick it is and if they can drive on it, and it's very safe. And the students report a number of deaths in their communities on ice highways. And so it's making it really, really hard for them to access food through trapping or through imported supplies. The students also talk about the intersection of climate issues with other environmental issues. Canada is known for conducting extractive projects in the north. Oil and uranium and other precious resources are up there, and many of these contaminate what little water is left, and the people have a hard time accessing clean drinking water. The youth also spoke about, interestingly, green energy and how some of these things can be complicated for them in their communities. And so hydroelectric is very popular in Canada, but hydroelectric dams are often built on Indigenous land. And so these youths' land is often either flooded if they're down upstream, or drained if they're downstream of a dam, and they can't access their traditional fishing waters. And so that's not to say they're against hydroelectric, but they want to be consulted on where and when and how these things are carried out. And so the young people have a very sophisticated understanding of their land from their elders and their experiences and their intersections with the government through policy, through consultation around industries and other things. And it's been amazing to see them share and collaborate across the region on all of these different aspects. And so just if you're not familiar with traditional knowledge or Indigenous knowledge, this is sort of a summary, because sometimes people think, oh, it's folklore. Because these young people come from communities that have lived in these exact locations for over 10,000 years. And so this knowledge is developed over time, and people have a rhythm in relation to the land that's now being disrupted. And this knowledge isn't folklore. It's qualitative and quantitative. People have a general sense of risk in the land, if the ice is safe or not. They're paying attention to water quality. A lot of them talk about the fish and how it's getting soft, how it doesn't taste the same anymore. Then they also have quantitative indicators, how many fish they're catching, the length and the size of fish, thickness of fat around organs, thickness of ice, these kinds of things. And this knowledge is passed on among people. And so this knowledge is intimate to the daily lives of these young people and their communities. And often they're not consulted in climate policy, and they're saying, no, we want to share this because it could really inform climate policy moving forward. This person quoted here, Lockhart from Lutzelke, is the mother of one of the students who was here last week. And she says, people who don't care much wouldn't notice the changes. Even me, I live in Edmonton, which is at the bottom of the map. I don't notice these changes. I really have to listen hard to these young people in order to understand what the effects are of my government's decision making on these people. And so I have a few recommendations, but they're really based in the recommendations of the youth I've been listening to for months. And these youth would really recommend the full, ethical, and appropriate participation of Indigenous peoples, including youth, in policy processes. So not a tokenistic approach, but a full approach and rigorous approach. And sometimes this means changing the very forms by which we collect data, because often how we collect data in a community doesn't account for the types of knowledge that that community holds. And so we need to learn to listen and be attentive to the ways that people are sharing knowledge to really develop long-term relationships with communities. And so some sort of broken down recommendations that I've made here are very simple: to create designated positions for Indigenous youth on youth councils or other policy bodies. In Canada, we have a Prime Minister's Youth Council. There could be spots reserved there for these young people, or in your own countries and governments. It's important to work with Indigenous communities over the long term. This youth project has been going for 6 years, and the larger research project for over 20 years. One of the students who came last week is 13 years old, and she's the youngest daughter of a man who has been working with the lead researcher on this project since he was 19. And so this is a very, can be an intense research process that takes a lifetime of partnerships in order to develop trust. And finally, ensure Indigenous youth are part of the research process. A lot of the youth said to me, Carrie, people are always, saying they've consulted. They send an email to us and they want to hear our answer on a survey, but they've never been here. They've never seen our land. They've never spoken to us. They've never heard what our place is like. And it is resource intensive to visit some of these communities, but it is different to be there than just to answer a survey online. And so we want to think of ways to really creatively engage young people in climate policy processes. And that is all I have.